and welcome to We Never Met, the podcast where I have interesting strangers on every single week. Today we have...
It is Radar, Tony Radar Hess from 99.1 The Mix Radio. Sam, thanks for having us on today. Me.
Yeah. Yeah, you're used to saying us because it's usually you and someone else.
Yeah, it's me and
Just
Elizabeth.
go right into
it's
that.
It's weird.
Yeah. So that just sort of gets us into the first thing. What got you into radio in the first place? Because how long have you been in the radio industry on air?
1998, I was an intern at FM 106 and full-time on mornings since January of 2000. So it's been over 20 years.
How'd you get into it in the first place? I mean, sort of interning, is that your first step into radio? Was that?
When I was a kid, I loved hearing the DJs on the air. When I grew up just outside Chicago, was Des Plaines, Illinois. And I used to listen to B96, which coincidentally enough is owned by our company now that I work for. But that was my love of radio right there. And my friends and I would say, let's call and request a song. And we're like, no, they're not going to answer our call. Will they answer the call? And I remember when the DJ answered, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to just sit there, answer the phone on a summer and listen to teenagers request songs. I'm like, that's a great job.
That's the dream right there.
Right. And then when the dream becomes reality, you're like, oh, these kids, that's all they do is request the same song.
They don't stop calling.
And they won't stop calling. Right. That's exactly what it is.
When you were growing up, were you making because I was doing a thing where I used to do all sorts of stuff, like make radio shows and do like video stuff. Were you into that as a kid?
My sister and brother-in-law will say that when I was 8, 9 years old, I would sit and talk to myself and pretend I was on the radio. It was just something fun. I was the youngest of the family, so I always had to kind of entertain myself. And then in high school, I remember for my birthday, my 15th birthday, my mom bought me, I was a child of the 80s, so it was like one of those small boom boxes with a cassette player. And I was like, oh, there's a record button here. Are you kidding me? I could record myself? So I remember going to the hardware store and I found with my dad, he was buying something and I saw the cassette tapes that you could record, the recordable ones. And I went, Dad, can I get a pack of 3? I just want to try this thing out. And man, from then on, when you hit play and record together, I have been in love with radio since. I'm like, I want to do a radio show. I used to do pretend radio shows. I would hold that up to my radio as I was recording and get like song intros and then talk over them and just practice that way because I heard DJs do that. And I didn't know that was, like the thing, but I was like, I'm going to emulate what they're doing.
That's advanced stuff. I mean, I used to like record myself, but I would never like record music and then like ramp up and like talk while the song is ramping.
Yeah. You got to do the intro, man. You got to hit the post, which I learned was, the music that plays just before the artist starts singing. That's the post. So you want to be able to nail the post. But I never knew what that was until I got into radio. But I was sitting there going, oh, I'm already doing that. I can do this. This is easy. I've been practicing since I was 15.
Do you still have those tapes? Like what sort of like was your show like back then?
So when I was younger, before I started recording, again, when my sister would say, who are you talking to downstairs in the basement? Oh, it's just yourself. Ha, ha, ha. She'd laugh at me. It was my radio show down there. And so I would just listen to the radio and just do things live. Never recorded. I wish I would have, but it was WTSR. That's Tony Super Radio.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
And it was me, this little 8-year-old down there going, WTSR, Tony Super Radio. Here's Bruce Springsteen. And then when I got older, when I started recording myself, I got into high school. And so for my buddies, I would do these fun things and these fun radio shows. And I'd be playing, their heavy metal favorites and stuff. I never was really a metalhead, except for one band, but I would do that for them. But my radio station was WASS, spells ASS, right? So I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, sure. The Ask Radio. Oh, it's edgy. That's so cool. Everybody is laughing at it. Oh, ha, ha, ha. So that was my thing there.
Because I read, I think you wrote this in your bio or someone did, that you were really shy as a kid. So, I guess, with radio, you don't really have to see the people you're talking to, obviously. But was it tough for you, like professionally getting into radio, like being sort of a shy, or were you shy as an adult?
I was shy as a kid, and that's why I think I always reverted to being in the basement and just talking to myself. And then when my sister would pick on me, I would say, you know, I would yell up the stairs and go, just knock it up, just close the door. And then I'd make sure she closed the door, and then I'd still wait because I knew what she was up to. And I was like,
oh, sure.
Are you still standing at the top of the steps? And she started laughing. I'm like, get out of here. And then I would be quiet for like, you know, I'd be quiet for like 20 minutes and go, okay, she's really gone, and then start over. But that was my thing. I loved to emulate the DJs on the radio, but I didn't want people to see me, you know. But then when I could talk in my own little booth or my own little basement area, I just felt like, you know, I could handle anything. I was in charge of the world, and that was really awesome. So yeah, I was shy up until the point of really when I got into high school. I was in speech class, and the sister that used to pick on me, Brenda, would tell me, hey, you know what you should do if you ever have to do a speech, which we did. We had to do those 5 speeches, the interpersonal and the persuasion and all that. She goes, instead of sitting there squirming in your seat and sweating and wondering, oh, am I going to be next? Am I going to be next? Volunteer to go first or second. Get it out of the way and then watch other people squirm. So I tried that one time, and it worked. I wasn't first. I was second, which I was kind of glad I went second because I had no clue what the first person was going to sound like. Once they got done and I did mine, I was like, this is cool. And so right from then on, it was freshman year of high school at Hartford Union High School, where I would be in Mr. Buchholz's speech class, and he would say, okay, who wants to go first this week? Mr. Hess, you probably want to go first or second. I'm like, I'll take second. That's fine. I'm good. You know, and that really broke me out of my shell. I was able to use my sister's advice. She picked on me all my life, but yeah, here she is. I always tell her, I go, without you, I'm probably not in radio.
Was radio different for you than you thought it was? Because when I initially got into radio, I had a very similar experience as you as a child, where I was really into radio, and I grew up in the Milwaukee area. I love like Bob and Brian growing up, like listening to them, just like that sort of format where you could, you know, talk for 4 hours, you know. But when I got into radio, it wasn't really like that anymore, at least when I got into it. When you initially wanted to get into radio, was it similar to what you had hoped it was?
I felt the same way you did. You know, when I was in high school, that's when Bob and Brian were on, and I'm like, I want to do that. And then I would listen to Dave Luzak on KLH and go, I want to do what he's doing. That's what I want to do. But then when you get into radio and you find out that, you know, those kind of opportunities are few and far between, and you got to land the right situation, it's quite a bit different. And then I was thinking, okay, well, that's fine. When I grew up as a kid, you know, like I said, listening to pop music on B96, you know, I would love to just walk in for 4 hours, play songs and go home. But that's not the reality of the whole situation. Right. You're, you know, even as an afternoon jock or on-air personality or an evening personality, you still have to have your show prep. You got to know what is going on in the world. You have to know what's going on with the artists. You still have to do your homework. And that was something that kind of, you know, hit me. I was like, oh, you just don't walk in and throw the headphones on, turn the mic on and say, yeah, here's a song. Boom, go. All right, next call. You know, there's a caller. Okay, great. Or we have a giveaway. Sweet. But no, it's a little more involved than that. So I had a little getting used to with that when I interned at FM 106. I was like, oh, this is big time. Okay, I get this now. And morning shows are a lot different when you start as an intern on a morning show. It's a lot different than the rest of the day parts. But I thought I could take this internship and turn it into, you know, something like an afternoon show or a night show. When I first started interning, I thought I could probably be a good night jock. I could do like 7 p.m. till midnight. I could handle this, you know, and do the party crowd and everything. But I never had that opportunity because I got thrown right in on the morning show in 2000. And this is after I had interned and kind of did some overnights on the country station and kind of got my feet wet and how to, you know, just relax. And you're not talking to, you know, whatever it is that's listening, 20,000, 75,000 people. You're just talking to one person. And so you're just telling like your buddy, you know, hey, here comes the next song. Boom. Thanks for listening and all that. So I went from, you know, like a fill-in and a weekend person after interning to, hey, our producer is leaving. do you want to be the new producer on the morning show? And I was like, it's going to be a little different. There's a lot more involved. So I learned a lot of audio editing and production. And also that's where the show prep thing came in, like what's going on today? We're a morning show. We need to talk about XYZ and what's going on locally. And so I learned a lot of that on the morning show, and I really liked it. It's busy, and it's kept me, from being bored. And really, I learned a ton just being a morning show producer for the first few years that I was on the country morning show. Just that type of thing of putting it in your own words and talking with a smile all the time, which that's something that, there's sometimes you get in your head and you're really trying to think about what to say and you forget. But if you talk with a smile on your face, it comes through the radio to the listener. Yeah, no, I agree. When I first started doing on-air stuff, that was something that the program director always said to me. And I was like, can they really tell? But you can hear it. Oh, yeah, you totally can. And I took 1 year of radio broadcasting down at Gateway Tech in Kenosha. And then that's when this job opened up as I was interning. And then, 106 said, hey, the morning show producer job is here. And so I went, I think I'm done with school for now. I'm done with that. I already have an associate's degree. I was working on another one, but this job came up. One of my instructors is still on the air here in Milwaukee. So I have to give him a shout out. Dan Kyle, who's on B93, taught one of our classes. And he's the one who told me when I was in the booth, practicing, he's like, you know what? If you talk with a smile on your face, you're going to come through really well. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to try that. And he always said that, hey, Tony, don't forget to talk with a smile on your face when you have the mic open. So that's what I always try and do, and just talk with a smile on your face. And yeah, it totally comes through, and you can hear it with other people on the air. You can totally tell. Yeah, no, I think just speaking from personal experience, my tendency when I started talking would be to be louder because I felt like that was more excited, like excitement equals volume. So like I would be really loud when I talked instead of just like being natural. And there are times, when I tell a story on the air, and I know my partner, Elizabeth Kay, will say that too. She's learned too how, volume doesn't equal emotion. If you could be passionate about something, but still keep your volume at a certain level. But if I'm talking about a story about, something my kids did and I had to yell at them, I'll say, hey, I'll kind of back away. There's techniques. You can back away from the mic, still throw that dad voice out there, I guess. And people understand, they're like, oh, I've heard that before, without blasting their ears out. But no, I think that's one of the things about radio. I mean, off of that I liked so much is it felt like a medium that wasn't really like anything else. You have a direct line of communication with people that are listening. They can like call legitimately while you are working and like talk to you. I thought that was like such a cool thing because you can't do that anywhere else. You can't do that with TV. You can't do that with I suppose like live streams, but you can't do it with like online media. Usually you can't do it with newspapers. It's like radio is the only thing that you could do that. I thought that was like such a cool thing. It is. And I love being local. I mean, the local aspect of, just being able to talk about things. The other day, I was just talking about a life hack I tried at home about, and this could be like a separate topic for your podcast, but it's about heating up your leftover pizza in a toaster, but you put the toaster on the side so that the cheese doesn't leak in. All right. So long story short, we have this lady call up and she goes, oh my gosh, are you like in tune to my life? I can't believe I was just talking about making grilled cheese that way. And here you guys are talking about this. I had no clue. There's nothing on social media about it until now that, I was talking about it on the air. And that's so cool to me is that when we take things like that, I use it as an example. There's other things obviously out there that we touch on and people go, oh my gosh, it feels like me because you're talking about the things that I'm talking about or the things that I'm involved in during my daily life. That is so cool. So I love that local aspect that way and just being able to touch people, that way and almost make it seem like I'm in your head. Right. Yeah. No, the grilled cheese thing, I did that. I used to do that all the time and I stopped because of the cheese thing. Like because the cheese would drip from in the bottom crumb tray. This is when I was in like high school. I used to do this. And my mom would like yell at me. She's like, stop doing that. And I'm like, well, it's just more efficient. Like it's more efficient to do it this way. You just have to tip it on its side and it's all gooch. It's all good. I wish I would have known that at the time. I wasn't innovative enough. Yeah.
But no, I love that part of like, you could be doing a show, even something simple as like getting people to call in and talk about something. You can't do that anywhere else. Like, it's like the last medium that you can do that in. I wanted to talk too about the transition from FM 106 to the mix. Like, how was that transition for you, going from a show where there was, how many people were on at the time that you were there? It was like Karen.
It was Karen and Scott. Yeah. And then me. So there was 3 of us. It's a little more difficult in that type of atmosphere, only because, you know, the big thing is don't talk over each other.
Sure.
And so you're kind of really doing a lot of gazing at each other, like who's going to say this, who's going to say
waiting.
that, and waiting.
All that dead air.
Because I got a doozy that I want to throw in here, and then all of a sudden the break is over, and you go, that was kind of a good ending there. I'm just going to hold on to this. Sometimes, other times, you as you're with a group like that for a while, like I was 17 years with those 2, you get that chemistry, and you go, okay, you said this. Guess what? I got this one. Bam! I say it. It's funny, and they're like, man, that was awesome. You did a great job. Or I'll say the same thing to the other 2. I used to say, man, that was funny. I said this, but then when you came back with XYZ, hilarious. So you kind of get that chemistry going, but it is a little more difficult. Now with Elizabeth and I, we kind of have that look, or we'll point to each other and say, oh, you're going to say something next. So let me finish up. That means you're coming up. You have an out, something funny to say, and then boom, we'll hit the song. Boom, we'll hit the commercial or something like that. It is a little bit easier with just one other person. And really it's easy with Elizabeth because, and some people have said, man, you developed chemistry right away. Well, that's because we have a history. Back in 2001, when I was on 106, I brought her on as an intern, and we've stayed friends since. So her time up in Green Bay at Green Bay radio station, she would send me air checks, or she would, stay in contact with me and just say, what do I do if, this happens? Have you ever had this happen on the morning show? Because she worked her way to the morning show too. And then when she came back here, she became somewhat of, I always tease her, somewhat of a competition. She's on the mix, I'm on the country station, but we still exchange, just not ideas for the show. Obviously you don't want to do that, but we still exchange like experiences and, hey, what works for you? Oh yeah, this and that. And then when 106 let me go in March of 2017, she was one of the first people to text me. And she said, man, if you ever need anything, let me know. We'll stay in contact. And then the mix changed up, and Wes left the show, the Mix Morning Show. And then August 2017, management said, hey, you know what? You guys have chemistry. Let's get you guys together. And so here we are. And it's kind of funny because back in the day when Elizabeth was an intern, she said, wouldn't it be fun to do a show together? And she would always say that to me. And I would always give her the same, yeah, that'd be great, intern Elizabeth. Sure. Yeah. Jokingly. Yeah. And here we are doing a show, and it's a lot of fun. It's and that's what makes it easy. It's not like I was brought in from Colorado and, okay, you got to meet this guy, you got to learn this, the morning routine that this woman does, or what he talks about, or how she talks. We pretty much knew each other pretty well. We did have to kind of say, okay, how do you want the show to go this way? How does the boss, Brian Kelly, my boss, want things to go? How should it sound? So just that type of thing. But otherwise, I think it was a pretty smooth transition. The only other thing is that, I have 2 daughters, so they listen to pop music. I was familiar with enough of it, but I was really, deeply into the country artists. But, it was pretty easy. It wasn't like I went from a music format to a talk format, which would have been a little bit more difficult for me, because I would have been like, okay, that's all I have to say. Let's play a song to fill some time. No, we have to keep talking. Okay.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. And I was going to ask about that concept of like building a relationship with someone, because when you're on a morning show specifically too, you do have more time to talk, and it's evident, really. You can tell when people don't like each other or people aren't getting along. So how did you go about like building those relationships on both of those shows? You sort of alluded to with the mix, but on FM 106, like how'd you go about that? Did you like take more time out to like hang out with each other after the show, or like what do you do?
Initially, we did not hang out with each other except for work functions. So if there was a concert, country music festival, that's when we were together. And I thought that really helped me to get to know the other two. I was young in radio when I started, so I pretty much acted like a sponge. I just kind of took in the knowledge that they were doing, or they would throw stuff out like, oh, I've been through this before. And, you got to look out for this in radio. And I was like, okay, I'll just kind of keep taking in what you're saying. Nod my head a lot, when you start out. Right. I think some people might get confused and lost in that, where when they first start in radio, especially on a morning show, like I'll use my experience. And I'm not saying I did it the perfect way, but there's some people that will start and they'll think, oh, well, I'm on a show now. I'm a star too. So I know you two have been doing a show for like 4 years together, but boom, here I am. And almost act like you've been there that long too. You kind of have to, and no matter what shift you start or where you start in radio or what job you have, you kind of have to pay your dues a little bit before you can really say, hey, I'm here. I've arrived finally. And now, I'm kind of like, even though I'm not on the same experience level, we're still on the same level as coworkers.
So the most like memorable part of your radio career thus far, what do you think that would be? Is there one memory that sticks out to you more than others?
I don't even have to think about this one. Yes. I mean, now I've had a lot of times where you do let's say a charity function or something, and you go, man, I'll never forget that kid or that family that came up and donated. And, but the one, for me, a personal one was back in 2003 at Country Thunder. My dad and my brother loved Willie Nelson. I mean, loved Willie Nelson. And he was playing Country Thunder as the headliner back in 2003. And now when this festival kicks off, there's interviews to do with the different bands that are on, and they film you doing the Jumbotron quick interview, less than 5 minutes. Hey, all right, you're going to catch, so-and-so next on the stage. And I was told by the backstage people and the TV production crew, yeah, Willie's probably not going to do a Jumbotron. And I was like, that's totally fine. I get it. He's an icon, one of the biggest names out there. No matter what genre of music you like, everybody knows Willie Nelson.
Sure.
So it came down to like a half hour before he was supposed to take the stage. And I knew that I was going to be on stage like 5 minutes before he took the stage to welcome the crowd and say, Willie Nelson's coming up. All of a sudden, Willie's tour guy comes out and says, Willie's decided to do the interview. Great. This is cool. Where does he want to do it? The designated, interview tent or in front of his bus? Well, the decision was in front of the bus. We're waiting in front of the bus. And if you know anything about Willie Nelson, he likes his weed.
Oh, yeah.
So the bus, you can tell the smell coming off the bus is like a contact high. You're like, all right, yeah, this obviously is Willie's buzz, right? Ha, ha, ha. And not a couple minutes later, a big dude comes out, big security guy, bodyguard, goes, you radar? Okay, Willie's not comfortable with doing the interview in front of the bus. And in back of my mind, I'm going, I don't get to meet him. I don't get to interview him. He goes, Willie wants you to do it at his kitchen table here in the bus. And so there's me and the camera dude. We kind of looked at each other like, oh my God, okay. Okay. So we step up on the bus and I'm waiting at his kitchen table. Here comes Willie. He comes bouncing down. And I swear, Sam, here's the thing. Say what you want about contact highs. I was not nervous once I was on that bus. It was always the lead.
It was working.
It was outside the bus, but boy, on that bus, I sat down. I could have talked to Willie for like an hour. I was so relaxed. Yeah, take it for what it's worth. All right. But I got to meet him, and this is in the days before cell phones were really hot with selfies and pictures and stuff. So I don't have a picture of it. I know people are like, oh, then if you don't have a picture, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Oh, it totally happened, Matt friend. It totally happened. I was on an Icons tour bus, and that was when Willie was 70 years old. He's now 87 and still kicking it and still on stage. And I love the fact that I was able to meet an American icon in music like Willie Nelson and to step on his tour bus, which not very many people can say. That's something that still blows me away to this day. The second thing, I guess the most memorable so far with the mix is just this past December. I mean, I loved the Goo Goo Dolls. Like when they first came on the scene, they were hard rocking. They're almost metalish. And then they kind of toned their sound down, but I still like them. and I was able to do a video interview with the band, and it was incredible because I was like, okay, there's somebody else that I idolized, back in the day before radio, and thought, man, the Goo Goo Dolls are rocking. Mm-hmm. And here I am. I'm talking to you guys. We're doing a video together. We're laughing together. We're shaking hands. So it's just that those are two huge things in my life that I can remember, both with the countryside and now with the pop side in my life that I'll never forget. It was just, it's cool. I mean, and some people may say, oh yeah, big deal, whatever. But man, for me, totally cool.
Yeah. I mean, speaking from like starting radio in like the early 2000s, when social media wasn't really a big thing, and now it's a huge thing. How has that changed like your job and like the radio landscape in general for you?
It's really added a huge component. It's like the people who were in radio before me used to say, oh man, we went from records to cassette or to CDs. That was a huge jump. Oh, this is like going from, a phonograph back in the 30s and 40s to digital. I mean, the change between, all the music is in the computer. It's all digital. All the commercials are that way. And then the other component is you're not just on the air and making appearances. You got social media that you need to put out there. And if you don't want to put yourself out there, if you're a private person, then radio is not for you, because people want that behind the scenes stuff. They want to know what you're doing. Hey, I listen to you on the radio all the time. And I think back to my high school days with Bob and Brian. I was like, if you sit and think, you go, man, it would have been great to have social media back then. I would love to, watch a Facebook Live with those guys and say, wow, that's what they look like, or that's what they do in the studio. That is so cool. And I think people still get a kick out of that kind of stuff. But yeah, that kind of thing, especially with social media, has really changed. And really streaming too. I mean, you can tell people till you're blue in the face to turn the radio on and listen to the mix. But man, if you can tell them to download your app and listen to the mix there, that's just another way that you can get in contact with us, not only listening, but also through our social channels and everything we've got posted there on the app. So there's a lot of ways that radio has just gone from your little speaker, whether it's in your house or in your car, to right there in front of you on your phone, on your computer, your laptop, whatever.
Yeah. And even outside of social media, where do you see like radio landscape going? Because I mean, you talk about being local and things like that. That's a thing that's happening fewer and fewer. With big broadcasters like iHeart that are just broadcasting the Elvis Duran show to every single market in the United States. So where do you see like radio going? Do you think they're being innovative enough to stay relevant in 20 years or so?
I think this year really kind of messes up radio companies, with COVID and everything. There's a lot of cuts, and not just, one company. A lot of companies had to make those cuts, and not just in radio, obviously. With the way that I see big companies like going to that syndication thing, I think it might work in some cities. Milwaukee, I've noticed that a lot of syndicated shows don't work here, and it's because people want the local thing. They want to be able to see you, out like on Water Street. They want to see you in West Dallas, where I live. They want to chat with you via social media. They don't just want to be just that entertained. Oh, okay. Well, that's a story this syndicator just talked about that, I saw on Entertainment Tonight. I really don't care. I want to know what's going on here locally. So I think they have to be careful with, listen to me. I'm giving them advice. I think you have to be, companies have to be careful with where they syndicate. And I think it's a bummer, because someone like me who started, as I mentioned earlier in this podcast, started on overnights just to kind of cut my teeth and make those mistakes overnight. I don't think that happens very much anymore with a lot of these pre-produced shows that run overnight or on the weekends. And I think that's kind of a bummer for people who want to get into radio. It's like, it's very difficult to get into. It was difficult when I got into it, and it's even more so now. So I would suggest to someone, start listening to those small towns, or try and get into those small town radio stations. And hopefully you can kind of go from there if you're looking to get into radio. I still love the little mom and pop places, that are out there, because They are really local, running farm reports at 5 in the morning, like I used to at WTKM up in Hartford. But if you really want to make it in radio, that's where you have to cut your teeth. I'm hoping that radio doesn't go that route where everything is syndicated, everything is, recorded and thrown at people. But who knows? Time will tell. And boy, with the way the pandemic's going, everything is kind of fluid, right? It's kind of up in the air.
It's true. Even back I started in 2013, and I was on like the weekends and stuff. But it was rare. I feel like Milwaukee seemed to have way more local programming, even on like the weekends, having live people in your area than a lot of markets ever had. It seems like a Milwaukee thing that there's a lot more local radio here than other places.
Yeah, Milwaukee loves the local stuff, man. And that's why Elizabeth and I on the mix, we're always trying to talk about the things that are going on here. If it's not something going on like the sunflowers or a beer garden somewhere, we always like to make up, have fun little games made up about Wisconsin, like Wisconsin lingo that I've kind of seen floating around social media, but I put a little change on it. It's, can you pronounce these Wisconsin towns without messing them up? Or you're a trustworthy Wisconsinite if you can pronounce these 10 towns, and some of them are like Alloway up in Green Bay, which is not even spelled that way, or something like that. People love that. Yeah, no, Schwabenon. People love that kind of stuff because they're like, oh, we drive through there and we go up north. That I know what they're talking about. So that's another aspect of, really touching the minds of people who go, whoa, they're talking about like where your cabin is. Oh, that's cool.
Right. Just to wrap up here, where can people find you're talking about social media, your social media channels, and you are with when do you guys broadcast? Is it 5 to 9? Is that weekdays?
We're on from 6 until 10, and then and then one of us will stay on until noon, bringing you music because while you work, it's always awesome to listen to the mix. Sorry, shameless plug. But one day I'll be on till noon. The next day Elizabeth will be on until noon and stuff. So we're on from 6 till 10 together, Elizabeth and Radar on the mix. And you can find the mix on Facebook. All you have to do is search 99.1 The Mix on Facebook. For me, I'm Radar Mix Radio is my brand page on Facebook. Otherwise, my personal page is Tony Radar Hess. Instagram, Radar Mix Radio. Twitter is Tony Radar Radio because somebody took Radar Mix Radio. I was like,
who?
I can't use that one. I don't know who it is, but I was like, I can't use it. What the heck? TikTok, Radar Mix Radio. So yeah, I'm, and Snapchat. Snapchat was going to be my non-radio app, but it's kind of turned into a lot of fans are on that, but it's Box Score 11. So I'm on every social media channel I think you can pretty much think of.
It was great to talk to you.
You know what this was all about? This is like being in radio and some of the time during this whole pandemic, Elizabeth and I had to do the show from two different areas. And so you had to kind of learn each other's cadence. You kind of learn when you want to just and it's not like, and like I said earlier, if you have something to say, you're like, yeah, but you know what? Now I want to kind of let the other person interject. You did a great job, Sam. I mean, it's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then it gets a lot easier with video, but yeah, and these computers, I'm telling you, I can't believe this one does not have a camera. And then the one that does have a camera, look at the battery's almost dead on it. I was worried about it dying. I'm like, forget it.
Oh, well, that was a good choice then. It was a good choice because then it would have died.
This is true, man. I appreciate you, and thanks for inviting me on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being on and being a part of Man Crush Madness when I released that.
Yes. I didn't do very well. I think I got past the second round, and that was pretty much it. But I don't have the looks like Riggs does from our sister station, Kiss. I said we might sound alike, but man, you're the more handsome dude. So congrats. And now I owe him a beer. Now I owe him a beer. So there you go. That was our bet.
Did you guys have you had a bet?
Yeah. I said, I'll take you out for a beer.
Oh, there you go. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And everyone listen to the Mix mornings, and you can stream it. What's the app and the site again, just so people know?
Yeah, sure. 991themix.com. You can listen to it there. Otherwise, on the radio.com app. It's an app called radio.com, and all you have to do is download it for your smartphone and then favorite the Mix, or you can tell your smart speaker too to play 99.1 The Mix on radio.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You got it, man. Anytime.